Great. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And Ms. Tanden, I can guarantee you there will be some challenges getting information. There always is. And this committee in particular, with our oversight responsibilities, needs that kind of transparency to do our work well. As I said earlier, most of what we do in that area is not just bipartisan, it's kind of nonpartisan. And so we need that, and we haven't always gotten it. On the regulatory issues, we talked a lot about earlier the need for cost-benefit analysis, and you and I disagreed on independent agencies, I think, in terms of where they should fit in, but I hope you'll take another look at that.
Yeah,
On
absolutely,
permitting
Senator.
reform, you and I talked about this quite a bit in our conversation. This is an area where we have been able to find that sweet spot between Republicans and Democrats. In 2015, legislation was passed, bipartisan, Senator McCaskill, myself, that creates this Federal Permitting Improvement Council called FAST 41, because it was part of the transportation bill, Section 41. And it's been amazing. I mean, it's helped a lot of good projects get across the finish line, and it's saved a lot of money. It's created a lot of jobs. It saved over $1 billion in costs, we know, and I think that's a really very low conservative estimate. I'll give you an example. There have been 4 recent projects that have saved substantial funding. They support 20,000 jobs, by the way. They have saved more than 10 years in permitting delays, just these 4 projects in the last year. So this is one that works. I've spent some time with the permitting, with the council itself, and OMB plays a coordinating role here. So I appreciate your commitment on the call to work with me to ensure that we can lift this sunset that's on FAST 41 now without making policy changes to the law so that the Permitting Council can continue its good work past 2022. Will you commit today to working with me to pass a sunset removal for FAST 41 that retains the current law?
Yes, Senator, and I do want to appreciate your leadership, the leadership of this committee. You're absolutely right. This has been a very successful program, a 60% reduction in time for permitting, a 60% since 2018. A 60% reduction in time is also a big savings in resources to big savings of resources to the government, but also for people who are trying to build major projects. And as we talked about in our discussion, I recognize that the permitting, the long time it can take for permitting is actually a real challenge in the United States. And as you look at
So
countries
at a time
like
when we're
China-
all talking about infrastructure, it's very popular, it's very unpopular to talk about how to find the money for it. It's a big challenge. This helps the federal dollar go further.
Absolutely.
So can you answer my question on whether you support taking off the sunset?
Yes, I do.
Okay, thank you. On Buy America, we talked about this earlier, the Made America Office and so on. I was pleased to see the executive order strengthening the Buy America Act. In some ways, by the way, it mimics a bipartisan BuyAmerica.gov Act that we'd like to work with you on, which would codify some of those good ideas. In other ways, this new EO, though, does weaken the domestic content requirements. It's troubling to see, to me, on Section 8, replacing the component test, so-called, with a new value-added test, replacing the component test whereby 50% of the components, must be made in America. It appears contrary to the Buy America Act, which explicitly references that test. Moreover, replacing the component test in order to count labor costs sounds nice, but it's counterproductive. Labor is already counted in the cost of the component. In this way, the EO risks reducing the amount of U.S. content being procured. So it sounds like a noble assist may actually end up throwing American workers under the bus. What authority in the statute do you believe gives the Federal Acquisition Regs the ability to replace the component test as a way to calculate the qualifications of U.S.-made goods?
Well, first, let me say, Senator, that I really welcome the opportunity to work with you on this. The intent here is to not weaken protections to ensure that that we are creating jobs in the United States and helping companies in the United States. So if there is some way in which we can work with you on this, we would welcome that opportunity, because I want to say that the goal of the Buy America provision is to strengthen the ability of us to, in the procurement process, select American companies.
Well, thank you for taking
So I
a
just
look at
welcome
that.
that opportunity.
Yeah, I think you'll find this component one was running the other way, and I don't think it's advertent. On the Buy America executive order that President Biden blocked on day one that President Trump had put into place, I also have concerns. This was a rule that increased the amount of content required to be made in America from 50 to 55% for iron and steel products, to 95% from 50% for iron and steel in particular. This was viewed as a big victory for American manufacturing, and especially for workers in the steel industry. I understand a blanket regulatory freeze was put out in the beginning, but can you commit to adopting these improvements on behalf of American workers?
I would absolutely work with you to ensure that our biometric provisions are as strong as possible.
Okay, I think, again, it may have been inadvertent, but the impact of it is to hurt manufacturing here in this country. On the IT front, we talked about the need to modernize, and we did pass this 21st Century Idea bill to modernize our federal websites, but we need to do much more. On the artificial intelligence front, you mentioned earlier, there are two issues. The previous administration launched a process at OMB, as you know, to articulate guidance for the regulation of AI in the private sector, and they also signed the AI in Government Act, which created a similar process to regulate our own internal use of AI. So we've got two things going on. Both are broadly supported by industry and civil society. Would you commit to continuing these popular OMB processes so we can quickly and effectively get guidance out to agencies regarding the regulation of artificial intelligence?
Absolutely.
On cyber issues, this massive breach we talked about earlier, SolarWinds, confirms what we've known for a long time. Our subcommittee here called PSI did an investigation and a report that I led, which was unfortunately a wake-up call saying that agencies have failed to comply year after year with the basic cybersecurity requirements, basic hygiene, as they say, primarily with the Federal Information Security Modernization Act, FISMA. And they're required under FISMA, federal agencies, to notify Congress if they experience a major incident. OMB is charged with developing this guidance, by the way, to determine when a cyber attack is a major incident. Unfortunately, in the area of SolarWinds, again, massive attack, the worst breach we've ever had in the history of our country, only a handful of agencies reported major incidents, which is one reason, frankly, the U.S. government was not on top of this sooner. Can you look at that current standard, and would you believe that it needs to be revisited?
Absolutely, and I would say transparency to the Congress and the public around cyber incidents is really vital. Obviously, consumers are affected, the public is affected by these attacks, and information is really a cornerstone.
Well, I've got more questions in that area with regard to OMB's role on cyber because, again, unfortunately, this latest attack has just magnified the fact that we're woefully behind in our agencies. And again, the private sector needs guidance as well. One final question. I understand from my staff that you discussed the need for us to create an environment we can be more honest about the problems facing Social Security. I would agree. It seems, however, that we need to build trust across the aisle in order to get people out of their partisan foxholes here to at least discuss these issues seriously. Can you commit to me today that you will work in good faith to help us educate the American people about the problems facing Social Security and give members of both parties some running room they need to start laying out potential solutions?
Yes, Senator. I would say President Biden has put forward ideas on Social Security solvency, lifting the payroll cap for families over $400,000 of income. But I appreciate the bipartisan interest in these issues, and I welcome a conversation about these and anything we can do any way I can be a partner in that. I welcome that opportunity.
Thank you, Mr.